There's someone in every group who, when something breaks, doesn't panic. They just look at it. And within minutes, it's fixed, while everyone else was still Googling the problem. Today we're going to break down exactly what separates that person from everyone else. Not their tools, not their talent, their mindset. We'll cover 5 specific psychological traits that fixers share. And by the time we reach point 4, you'll understand why most people never develop this ability, even though they're fully capable of it. There's also something else, a hidden cost to being a fixer, something most people never talk about. We'll get to that at the end. This isn't guesswork. A 2021 study from the University of Edinburgh examined what psychologists call self-directed problem solving, the ability to engage with unfamiliar challenges without external guidance. What they found is striking. The gap between people who fix things and people who don't isn't intelligence. It's a cluster of trainable psychological habits, which means this isn't about who you are. It's about how you've learned to think.
Point 1. Tolerance for ambiguity. It's 6:30. You've got a deadline tomorrow. The router light is blinking red, and the broadband helpline puts you on hold for 40 minutes. One person in the flat stares at the screen, paralyzed. The other picks up the router, reads the back, and starts methodically working through it. That second person isn't smarter. They're simply more comfortable not knowing the answer yet. This is called tolerance for ambiguity, the ability to sit with uncertainty without shutting down. Psychologist Else Frankel-Brunswick first identified this trait in the 1940s, and decades of follow-up research confirm it as a core predictor of practical problem solving. People with low tolerance for ambiguity treat an unknown situation as a threat. People with high tolerance treat it as a puzzle. The difference in behavior is enormous, even when the underlying ability is identical. Think about the last time something broke. What did your body do first? If you felt immediate anxiety, you're not broken. You've just been trained to expect certainty. The good news, this tolerance can be built deliberately through small daily exposures to problems you don't know how to solve. Which leads directly to what fixers do next, and it's not what most people expect.
Point 2. First principles thinking. Most people look at a broken thing and think, I don't know how to fix this. Fixers look at the same broken thing and think, what is this actually supposed to do and why isn't it doing it? That shift is called first principles thinking, stripping a problem back to its most fundamental components rather than pattern matching to previous experience. It's a concept popularized in modern psychology by researchers studying expert problem solvers, and it's central to how engineers, surgeons, and master tradespeople actually diagnose faults.
Here's why it matters for everyday fixers. When you ask, what is this for, rather than what have I seen before, you stop needing prior experience. You just need logic. A 2019 paper in Psychological Science found that people who habitually use first principles reasoning solve novel technical problems 34% faster than those relying purely on memorized solutions. The practical application is simple. When something breaks, resist the urge to immediately search for the answer. Spend 60 seconds asking what the object does and what specifically has changed. That 1 minute rewires how your brain approaches the problem. But thinking clearly is only useful if you're not already defeated before you start, which is where point 3 gets uncomfortable.
Point 3. Low catastrophizing. The boiler breaks on the coldest weekend of January. For one person, this is a catastrophe. They're already catastrophizing, imagining burst pipes, flooding, thousands of pounds in damage, a ruined Christmas. For another person, it's a problem to be solved before Monday. Same situation, completely different internal experience. Low catastrophizing is the psychological habit of accurately assessing the severity of a problem rather than amplifying it emotionally. This isn't about being cold or detached. It's about keeping the prefrontal cortex, the problem-solving part of your brain, in charge, rather than handing control to the amygdala, which specializes in panic.
Research from King's College London, published in 2020, found that catastrophizing measurably impairs practical cognition. When we emotionally amplify a problem, we narrow our attention, which is the opposite of what good diagnosis requires. Fixers are not emotionally numb. They've simply learned, often through experience, that most problems are solvable, which makes catastrophizing feel pointless. That belief is earned through repeated exposure. Every problem you solve builds the internal evidence that problems can be solved. Which is worth noting because what I'm about to say in point 4 reframes the entire idea of who becomes a fixer, and it might surprise you. If you're still here, here's the part most people miss when they talk about fixers. It's not about skill. It's not even really about confidence. It's about a specific relationship with failure.
Point 4. Constructive failure processing. He's tried to fix the car. It still doesn't start. Most people would either give up or spiral into frustration. He writes down what he tried and what happened. Then he tries something different. This is constructive failure processing, the ability to extract useful information from a failed attempt rather than treating failure as a verdict. It's one of the most well-documented traits in expertise research. Carol Dweck's foundational work at Stanford on growth mindset, later replicated extensively in UK education research, including studies from Cambridge's Faculty of Education, found that how people interpret failure predicts future performance more reliably than raw ability.
Fixers don't experience failure as, "I can't do this." They experience it as, "That approach doesn't work. Useful information." The practical shift: next time something you tried doesn't work, write one sentence about what you learned before you move on. That one habit begins to rewire how your brain files failure, not as evidence of limitation, but as data. And this connects to the final trait, which is perhaps the most quietly powerful of all. Point 5. Intrinsic motivation to understand. Nobody asked them to. There's no deadline, no emergency, no external reward. They just want to understand how it works. This is the trait that underlies everything else: intrinsic motivation to understand, a genuine, self-generated curiosity about how things function. Psychologists distinguish this sharply from extrinsic motivation, which is curiosity driven by reward or fear of embarrassment. Intrinsic motivation is durable. It builds deep knowledge slowly over years. A 2022 study from University College London found that individuals who regularly engage in voluntary, curiosity-driven learning about mechanical or technical systems demonstrate significantly broader practical problem-solving ability across unrelated domains. In other words, the person who spent Sunday afternoon reading about how their central heating works isn't just better at fixing central heating, they're better at fixing everything because their brain has learned to map systems. Curiosity, it turns out, is not a personality trait you either have or don't. It's a habit you either practice or don't. Which is, to put it mildly, quite significant. At the start of this video, I mentioned a hidden cost to being a fixer. Here it is. People who fix everything often become the person everyone relies on. They absorb other people's panic. They carry problems that aren't theirs. And because they never catastrophize, they often don't notice the weight accumulating. The psychology of fixers is genuinely admirable, but it's worth understanding this. The same traits that make someone exceptional at solving external problems can, over time, make it harder for them to acknowledge when they need help. The fixer who can diagnose anything can be the last person to diagnose their own limits. What this entire video is really about isn't tools or talent. It's about the quiet courage it takes to stay calm, stay curious, and keep going in a world that constantly tells you to panic. If this shifted how you see the people in your life who seem unflappable, the next video on the psychology of people who stay calm under pressure goes even further. It's the one most people message me about. You'll find it linked at the end of this video. And one last thing, which of these 5 traits do you recognize most in yourself? Drop the number in the comments. I read every one.